Happy Sunday. It's time to read chapter 11 of book 2, a companion picture. So we're live on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Let's see what's going on in Dickens' world. And we just have the Marquis dead, stabbed through the heart, very dramatic scene. Let's see what happens next. Sidney, said Mr. Stryver, on that self-same night or morning to his jackal. Remember, they compared the jackal and the lion, I think it was. Let's see. No, it's in book 2, Hundreds of People, the jackal. We know he's the jackal because he was the one that did all the work for him. Fatima, hey, you're so sweet as always. And how does Graduated World feel? Mix another bowl of punch. I have something to say to you. Sidney had been working double tides that night and the night before and the night before that, and a good many nights in succession, making a grand clearance among Mr. Stryver's paper before the setting in of the long vacation. The clearance was effected at last. The Stryver arrears were handsomely fetched up. Everything was got rid of until November should come with its fog, atmospheric, and fogs legal, and bring grist to the mill again. Sidney was none the livelier and none the soberer for so much application. It had taken a deal of extra toweling to pull him through the night. A correspondingly extra quantity of wine had preceded the toweling, and he was in a very damaged condition as he now pulled his turban off and threw it into the basin in which he had steeped it at intervals for the last 6 hours. Are you mixing that other bowl of punch? Said Stryver the portly, with his hands in his waistband, glancing round from the sofa where he lay on his back. I am. Now look here, I'm going to tell you something that will rather surprise you and that perhaps will make you think me not quite as shrewd as you usually do think me. I intend to marry. Yeah, it does feel good to be free. I mean, then it's on to college, right? You've got to do that next step. But someday you'll be totally free. And college is much more free than high school. Hey, Dinah. So he is ready to marry. Do you? Yes, and not for money. What do you say now? I don't feel disposed to say much. Who is she? Guess. Do I know her? Guess. I'm not going to guess at 5 o'clock in the morning with my brains frying and sputtering in my head. If you want me to guess, you must ask me to dinner. Well, then I'll tell you, said Stryver, coming slowly into a sitting posture. Sidney, I rather despair. So Stryver is the attorney. Sidney Carver is the one that looks Darnay. Sidney, I rather despair of making myself intelligible to you because you're such an insensible dog. And you, returned Sidney, busy concocting the punch, are such a sensitive and poetical spirit. Come, rejoined Stryver, laughing boastfully, though I don't prefer any claim to being the soul of romance, for I hope I know better. Still, I'm a tenderer sort of fellow than you. You are luckier, if you mean that. I don't mean that. I mean, I am a man of more, say gallantry while you're about it, suggested Carton. Well, I'll say gallantry. Gallantry is like sophistication, and to be gentlemanly, to be gallant is to be respectful. And, you know, that's the gentleman that opens the door for the woman or lets her take the lead or is, you know, sweeps the bow to her. That's the gallant person. My meaning is that I am a man, said Stryver, inflating himself at his friend as he made the punch. Who cares more to be agreeable? Who takes more pains to be agreeable? Who knows better how to be agreeable in a woman's society than you do? Go on, said Sidney Carton. No, but before I go on, said Stryver, shaking his head in his bullying way, I'll have this out with you. You've been at Dr. Manette's house as much as I have, or more than I have. Why, I've been ashamed of your moroseness there. Your manners have been of that silent and sullen and hangdog kind that upon my life and soul I've been ashamed of you, Sidney. It would be very beneficial to a man of your practice at the bar to be ashamed of anything, returned Sidney. You ought to be much obliged to me. You shall not get off in that way, rejoined Stryver, shouldering the rejoinder at him. No, Sidney, it's my duty to tell you, and I tell you to your face, to do you good, that you are a devilish ill-conditioned fellow in that sort of society. You are a disagreeable fellow. Sidney drank a bumper of the punch he had made and laughed. Look Look at me, said Stryver, squaring himself. I have less need to make myself agreeable than you have, being more independent in circumstances. Why do I do it? I never saw you do it yet, muttered Carton. I do it because it's politic. I do it on principle. And look at me. I get on. You don't get on with your account of your matrimonial intentions, answered Carton with a careless air. I wish you would keep to that. As to me, will you never understand that I am incorrigible, like full of mischief? You can't get me to behave correctly. He asked the question with some appearance of scorn. You have no business to be incorrigible, was his friend's answer, delivered in no very soothing tone. I have no business to be at all that I know of, said Sidney Carton. Who is the lady? Now don't let my announcement of the name make you uncomfortable, Sidney, said Mr. Stryver, preparing him with ostentatious friendliness, ostentatious showy, for the disclosure he was about to make, because I know you don't mean half what you say, and if you meant it all, it would be of no importance. I make this little preface because you once mentioned the young lady to me in slighting terms. I did? Certainly, and in these chambers. Sidney Carton looked at his punch and looked at his complacent friend, drank his punch and looked at his complacent friend. You made mention of the young lady as a golden-haired doll. The young lady is Miss Minetta. So we have somebody else interested in her. Now remember, Charles Darnay went to the father and said, I'm interested in Lucy, and they made their deal, their promises. And now we've got Stryver that wants to be interested in her to marry her. So there's our hundreds of suitors. If you had been a fellow of any sensitiveness or delicacy of feeling in that kind of way, Sidney, I might have been a little resentful of your employing such a designation, but you're not. You want that sense altogether. Therefore, I am no more annoyed when I think of the expression than I should be annoyed by a man's opinion of a picture of mine, who had no eye for pictures, or of a piece of music of mine, who had no ear for music. In other words, you don't know how to appreciate this girl, so I'm not jealous that you don't appreciate her. Sidney Carton drank the punch at a great rate, drank it by bumpers, looking at his friend. Now you know all about it, Sid, said Mr. Stryver. I don't care about Fortune. She is a charming creature, and I have made up my mind to please myself. On the whole, I think I can afford to please myself. She will have in me a man already pretty well off, and a rapidly rising man, and a man of some distinction. It is a piece of good fortune for her, but she is worthy of good fortune. Are you astonished? So he's saying, I'm not marrying her for her money or her connections. I'm marrying her because she's a pretty girl, and, she'll be lucky to have me. Phoebe says, cry the beloved country. I'm so glad, Phoebe. I'm glad it was helpful to you. Are you who wrote the comment about the August date reference? I responded to that today. Carton, still drinking the punch, rejoined, why should I be astonished? You approve? Oh, I don't care about Fortune. No, I already read that. Are you astonished? Why should I be astonished? You approve? Carton, still drinking the punch, rejoined, why should I not approve? Well, said his friend Stryver, you take it more easily than I fancied you would, and are less mercenary. Mercenary is somebody who sells himself for a fee, like as a soldier, on my behalf than I thought you would be. Though to be sure, you know well enough by this time that your ancient chum is a man of pretty strong will. Yes, Sidney, I've had enough of this style of life, with no other as a change from it. I feel that it is a pleasant thing for a man to have a home when he feels inclined to go to it. When he doesn't, he can stay away. And I feel that Miss Minette will tell well in any station and will always do me credit. So I've made up my mind. And now, Sidney, old boy, I want to say a word to you about your prospects. You are in a bad way, you know. You really are in a bad way. You don't know the value of money. You live hard, like drink too much. You'll knock up one of these days and be ill and poor. You really ought to think about a nurse. The prosperous patronage with which he said it made him look twice as big as he was and 4 times as offensive. Now, let me recommend you, pursued Stryver, to look it in the face. I have looked it in the face in my different way. Look it in the face, you in your different way. Marry. You need to marry for somebody to take care of you. That's his position on marriage. Marry. Provide somebody to take care of you. Never mind your having no enjoyment of a woman's society, nor understanding of it, nor tact for it. Find out somebody. Find out some respectable woman with a little property, somebody in the landlady way or lodging letting way, and marry her against a rainy day. That's the kind of thing for you. Now think of it, Sydney. I'll think of it, said Sydney. And that's the end of chapter 12. It was a short one. But I didn't read our vocabulary from our last unit. So unit after the trial, I did that one. Then words in their context, dispense. I think I did those words. Yeah, 10 through 13. That's what we're on now. Obsequiousness. I cannot say that word. All right, so let's look at the words for this section. This is Lucy Suitors. This is the focus of this unit, Unit 6. There's some interesting questions. How long time has passed since the death of the Marquis? About a year. Remember that we read that line, the 12 months, not more months to the number of 12 had come and gone. Remember, I liked that line. How much does Lucy know the circumstances of Charles' visit to the Marquis? Charles hasn't told Lucy about his visit or about the relationship to the Marquis. They keep that a secret, remember? What job does Darnay find to support himself in England? He's a tutor of French. What subject does Darnay speak to Dr. Manette? And what is his what's Dr. Manette's reaction? So, hi, Teen Idol. So that was about getting married and the promises they made to each other. I'm so glad you did too. So these are just comprehension questions. And the reason I want to point this out is it's really important that you go back through and find a tool that takes you through comprehension questions like this, because you want to make sure you know, you understand what's just happened. And a lot of times kids get lost, especially in books that are from another time where the language is very verbose. There's a lot of words. And a lot of times you can get lost on character or lost on plot. And that's the foundation. That's your basic high school coursework. The teacher's going to ask comprehension questions, plot questions, character questions. Those are going to be the foundational things. Then that's what I like about the organization of this teaching guide. Then this one gets into characters. So let's review some of the characters. A major contrast in this unit is between Stryver, the fellow of delicacy, and Carton, the fellow of no delicacy. How does Stryver reveal his character again in giving this his reasons for marrying? And we're just talking about that. Stryver, so we're comparing Stryver, not Charles Darnay and Carton, Sidney Carton, not Carton. This is Stryver, the attorney. And he's got a very practical way of looking at marriage, and he's telling Sidney Carton, every time I teach this story, I get the characters mixed up. He's telling Sidney Carton, look, you're getting old. You don't take care of yourself. You need to find a wife who'll be like a nanny to you to take care of you. Somebody who's good at taking care of people. So he has a very practical position on marriage. And so he says very practically, I know I can do better than Lucy Manette, but she's cute. She's pretty. She's a good woman. I want to choose her to marry because, and he'll get into this more, because I want to do this for myself. As opposed to Charles Darnay, who truly loves her and wants to make sure everybody knows, I won't take her away from you, Dr. Manette. So that gets into some of the characterization. Then it talks about the social and historical setting. But we haven't read that part yet, so I'm not going to get it. Then we get into literary devices. And literary devices are the hard things that you get in essays, that you get in like short answers on tests. So you want to look at those literary. So they're talking about irony in this one. It goes way into depth on irony. It says Stryver presents first to Carton and then to Laurie his intentions to marry Lucy. There's much irony, quite unintended by Stryver in his own words and thoughts concerning himself. Give some examples of irony that's used. Now, we haven't read that part yet, so I don't want to get into that yet. Hazel, I read the entire Thousand Splendid Suns. Yay. I'm glad it was helpful. I taught a Hazel, and she's in one of those sessions. And I had an Aunt Hazel, a great aunt, actually. So then think in terms of going deeper. If you're an AP student, an honor student, that's when you dig deeper into these literary devices and these things like irony and parallel structure and foils and things like that. And then we get into words and their context. So we're going to go through page, let's see where I finished off. Chapter 11. I finished on 127. So we won't get a lot of words this time. Shrewd is one of the words. Shrewd, that's on page 124. And it reads, I'm going to tell you something that will rather surprise you and that perhaps will make you think me not quite as shrewd as you usually do think me. And then a context clue is, oh, you heard that. I didn't know if I said her name. The chess master made a shrewd move after which his opponent resigned. So based on that, do you think shrewd means clever, highly emotional, offbeat and impractical, colorful and exciting? So think about the chess master made a shrewd move, which caused the opponent to resign. So would that be colorful and exciting? Would you quit because it was exciting? Would you quit because it was an impractical move? Would you quit because it was an emotional move? Or would you quit because it was such a clever move you couldn't beat it? So yeah, it's A, clever. Intelligible. Intelligible is the word. From the book, Sydney, I rather despair of making myself intelligible to you because you are such an insensible dog. And in context, the student writes so carelessly, his papers are barely intelligible. So we know intelligent means smart, right? But this one, he writes so carelessly, his papers are barely intelligible. To be, you can't understand it. So let's see what the choices are. Appreciated, understandable, free of restrictions, enjoyable. So again, it's understandable. See how I kind of take into it and draw on what I already know and look at the context clues. Moroseness. Now this might be a word we don't hear that word very much. He's very morose. Moroseness. In the story, why? I've been ashamed of your moroseness there. And then in context, Paul's unusual moroseness is due to a disagreement with his fiancée. So how would you feel? What would your mood be if you've had a disagreement with the person you love? In theory, your fiancé is the person you love. So here it says the choices are talkativeness, arrogance, cleverness, gloominess. Again, apply it. How would you feel? Would you feel talkative if you were in a fight with your fiance? Would you feel arrogant, like better than everybody else? And that could be, I mean, I could see that. Would you feel clever if you were in a fight? Again, depending on your personality, you could go for that. Would you feel sad, gloominess? So that seems the most likely choice. And indeed, it is the correct choice, gloominess, morose. And ostentatious. Now, I gave you a hint of that when we read it. So in the context, in the story, Mr. Stryver prepared him with ostentatious friendliness for the disclosure he was about to make. And then the context clue, all that extra jewelry made Leona's outfit seemed too ostentatious. So she has showy jewelry. So if you're wearing fancy jewelry and you're trying to impress everybody, and it says the choices are noisy, appropriate, showy, I've used that word a couple times, restrained. So indeed, ostentatious is to be showy, to put on. All right, well, that's all the words we've read so far. The rest of these are from parts we haven't read in the book yet. And we're only 18 minutes in. Let's see how long chapter 12 is. I think that's all I'm going to read because I have been tired. I keep saying that. I've got to work tomorrow, so I will probably hit the hay early. You can interrupt because I was just closing out. Sorry, I'm stuck on if I should read Purple Hibiscus or The Alchemist next. Oh, okay. Well, let me give you a little summary. The Purple Hibiscus is set in Africa. Hi, Monica. I wondered if that was ever helpful to people that have any kind of sight impairment. My dad was having some struggle with his eyes and he seemed to enjoy it. But I think audiobooks would probably be better than when I stop and talk. So I'm curious, Monica, if that is annoying to him, because I'm not going to change it, but I would think it is. there's a method in my madness. The average student's attention span is short, so I try and break it up because the reading can sound monotonous after a while. So that's part of the reason I do interrupt. I also try and interrupt to connect to things in the story, and sometimes I just chat with you all, which I think would be annoying, especially if he's not. Is he reading along with Braille or is he just listening along? And then back to oh, that's good to know, Monica. Thank you. So back, Hazel, to your question. Purple Hibiscus is about a family. So if you have a religious background and maybe you're in high school and kind of struggling with the impact of your religion, we're looking at the impact of religion on culture. And it's set in North Africa and colonized Africa, where the European Christianity has brought its way in. The father is very, very religious. The children are trying to make sense of that hypocritical father, the father that you see on the street and the father that we see in the home, and the impact that all. I think it's an interesting, if you grew up in a home, because I grew up in a very religious family, and as you become a young adult, you see the hypocrisies and you see the inconsistencies, and the story of this young girl trying to figure herself out is very, very interesting. The Alchemist is just a sweet read. It's hopeful, it's upbeat, it gives you some, it helps you focus on dreams. It's also about the character is a young boy who's on a journey. And again, it's North Africa. So both of them are set in Africa, but very different Africa, which I think is good. And I like to have books about Africa in my playlist because most Americans think of Africa as the Lion King. And then as you begin to read Things Fall Apart or Cry the Beloved Country or Purple Hibiscus or The Alchemist, they're all in different parts of Africa and different historical times of Africa. And it begins to widen out that single story that many of us have about Africa, that there are multiple countries in Africa with different focuses and had different stories in them. Dinah, you started Their Eyes Were Watching God today. That is one of my, A Thousand Splendid Suns and Their Eyes Were Watching God are probably two of my favorite on the playlist. So Hazel, let me know what you choose. I'm curious to know what you think about them. I really do like Purple Hibiscus author. She's the one who does the TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story. And she's a really, really, she wrote the book Americana. So it is a focus that we don't have many authors, female, African American. She's truly African and American. So a person of color that has her own experience to share, and she's really terrific. Start with Purple Hibiscus. I don't think there's a movie of that one though, but there might be a movie of The Alchemist. So, but Alchemist is a sweet read. Like it always just, I feel better after I read The Alchemist. So it just depends on what mood you're in. Sometimes I don't want to read something that's going to make me think and be heavy and reflect. And, sometimes I just want a happy feel good book. So speaking of happy feel good, In the Heights, I actually went to the movie in the cinema. There were 4 people total in the cinema. Talk about a feel good. Like if you love dance, if you have any interest in immigration, and again, the danger of the single story, seeing the immigrant story in such a positive way, in such a rich and colorful way, honoring their heritage and their cultural experience. Really a great movie. I enjoyed it so much. And it's a musical. I love musicals. So it's a Lin-Manuel, I always forget his whole name. Lin-Manuel, blah, 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 blah. Somebody help me out here. Manuel Miranda. I have a friend named Miranda. You think I could remember that? So and it's on HBO Max. If you guys have that, you could watch it. But it was fabulous on the screen, on the big screen. Just so happy. Such a happy movie. I mean, it's got hard moments in it, but a beautiful, beautiful movie. Color was great. Like after we've been locked in so much, it was just so nice to go to the cinema and see all of that happening. All right. Well, that's almost 30 minutes. I will be back to work, so I don't know how much I'll read this week, but I will keep trying. And even if you're not reading live with me, keep reading. Subscribe if you haven't already. Ring the bell because you never know when I'm going to come on live. I love to watch my YouTubers, and they're pretty predictable. I know on Sunday morning, um, Beck and Eamon are going to release their van lifers. I know Danny and Tula. I am subscribed to them, so I know when they're going to release something. But I'm terrible about not letting you know. But on Discord, Dinah, is that how you came on? Because I told in Discord, hey guys, I'm going to go read soon. Do you ever notice that on Discord and then you come to watch the live read? I'm not sure. So I hope you guys have a great week too. Some of you out of school for the first time and maybe starting new jobs, maybe you're heading to the pool. I mean, summer is definitely here in Louisiana. It is hot. Discord lets you know I'm coming on. So, but if you ring the bell, it'll tell you, hey, Rachel's going on to read. So you guys have a marvelous week. Be kind to yourselves. Do some things for your family, for yourself, to take care of each other, and keep reading. And I will read to you next time. See ya.